3 minutes ago, peace negotiations slipped out of Trump's control. Putin has already been informed that Kaspiysk is lost. Drones have wreaked havoc in Russia. The front line is spreading across enemy territory. Shock. The Kremlin has embarrassed itself again. The Sarmat missile has buried all of Putin's plans. Norway and Britain are taking a hard line. The launch of mega weapon production lines for Ukraine. Russian aviation has found itself at a crossroads. Is the sky over enemy territory finally being closed? All this in our episode Hellpoint. An urgent and sudden twist in the negotiations. Putin has derailed peace. A surge of tension erupted in Florida. A closed-door meeting between the American and Ukrainian delegations. In the corridors, there are already whispers about pressure on Kyiv and attempts to push through a US-favored plan. Even with talk about the elections. The Kremlin is rubbing its hands together. The start of historic meetings. Aren't the Americans and Russians trying to decide Ukraine's fate without Ukraine? We'll tell you the details next.
The final peace plan hasn't been agreed upon, but Trump still claims there are good chances to resolve the war. A meeting between the Ukrainian and US delegations took place in the United States. The negotiations lasted about 5 hours. In the end, both sides described them as successful and constructive.
They're ongoing and they're going well. We want to stop the killing of people. This doesn't directly concern us, but I would like to save as many lives as possible. A lot of people are dying. Last month, 27,000 people died in this senseless war. This should never have happened.
At the same time as before, two main issues remain: security guarantees for post-war Ukraine and territorial concessions that Kyiv is being pressured to make. Obviously, neither of these issues has been resolved.
The task was completed with great success, achieving all objectives and exceeding expectations. This accomplishment signifies a significant milestone, demonstrating effective execution and a highly favorable outcome. It was indeed a triumph, marking a successful conclusion to the endeavor. What the US is proposing at this point, Ukraine cannot agree to. I don't see a compromise here. Therefore, the American side will bring to Russia about 80 to 85% of the text of the peace plan. In
turn, the head of the American delegation, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, stated that there is still a lot of work ahead. However, some progress was still made during the negotiations in Florida the day before. At the same time, analysts note that this time the United States has indeed started to listen more to Ukrainian arguments. And they have stopped repeating that the war must end under any conditions.
It is also about ensuring that the war comes to an end, in such a way that Ukraine remains sovereign and independent and has the opportunity for genuine prosperity. In other words, it's not just about ending the war, it's about ending the war in such a way that a mechanism and a path forward are created which will allow Ukraine to be independent and sovereign, never experience war again, and create tremendous prosperity for its people.
Kyiv also notes that there has been more constructive dialogue in the communication between the US and Ukrainian delegations. The head of the Ukrainian negotiating team, Rustem Umerov, also called the meeting successful and meaningful. He noted that further consultations and work on agreeing on a general framework solution lie ahead.
We are grateful to the United States and their team for helping us. The US hears us, the US supports us, the US stands by our side, and we are grateful for everything that has been done up to this point.
At the same time, the next stage of negotiations will be a visit to Moscow. Steve Witkoff will deliver the agreed points to Putin and hear his response. According to experts, after the sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft, the Kremlin will be wary of responding with a direct refusal. Analysts consider the most likely scenario to be Putin's proposal for direct talks with Trump, which never took place in Budapest. And here much depends on the American guarantor. After all, Washington has already stated that such a meeting is only possible after Moscow adopts a peace agreement.
If Trump makes significant concessions, if the planned meeting goes forward without Russia's prior agreement to some kind of peace plan, then Putin will put forward a new ultimatum. That's a dead end. That's what practice shows. When the Americans make concessions to Putin, when they start making compromises with Russia, Putin begins to put forward new additional demands. And the negotiation process comes to a dead end. In
turn, another Trump envoy, US Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, is supposed to come to Kyiv. He will apparently try to persuade Volodymyr Zelensky to make new concessions. And in this situation, it's also very important for Ukraine to show
That's why, of course, it's important here to demonstrate a constructive approach from the Ukrainian delegation. And indeed, as of this very moment, we have absolutely not given a single solitary compelling reason whatsoever to genuinely doubt such a significant and profound statement, which remains entirely unchallenged.
At the same time, in order to coordinate the positions of Ukraine and Europe, Zelensky flew to Paris the day before to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron. So this week will clearly show how willing all sides are to make concessions and whether there is reason to expect successful negotiations in the near future.
Right now, the Russian Caspian region is in an uproar. A massive explosion has completely engulfed Putin's critically important military facilities. You have to see this. Our forces are tearing the enemy apart on the front lines while the Kremlin still believes that Ukraine will surrender Donbas. Shock, our retaliation has finally arrived. Russian command posts are becoming helpless and the Ukrainian armed forces are playing their trump cards. Exclusive details? More on this in the following report.
Drones over Kaspisk in Dagestan.
Strikes on the Caspian, it's a distance of over 1,000 kilometers. For Kaspisk, these are routine, ordinary events.
Kaspisk hosts a number of military facilities belonging to the occupying country as well as oil refining enterprises. Accordingly, they could have been the targets of the strike. These shots show Ukrainian border guard drone operators destroying legitimate targets. As a result, in the southern Slobozhansky direction, 2 enemy vehicles, communication systems, and 5 occupiers were destroyed. And here, soldiers of the 57th Brigade are destroying Zaduni drones, whose plan was to disrupt Ukrainian logistics. Another small victory for the armed forces of Ukraine is the clearing of the village of Ivanivka in Dnipropetrovsk region from occupiers. On the deep state map, you can see that on November 28th, Ivanivka was marked as a gray zone, and on the 29th, it was already marked as liberated territory. The situation remains more difficult in the Pokrovsk direction. In Mirnohrad, the Russian army does not stop trying. The complete withdrawal of the armed forces of Ukraine from Donbas, journalists report. The Ukrainian side is against this and demands a meeting between Zelensky and Trump.
At the moment, no final decision has been made in the negotiation process. On the other hand, it should be emphasized that Bitkov has already flown to Moscow for talks with the Russian dictator.
Meanwhile, Bloomberg reports that NATO is preparing for a potential conflict with Russia with minimal support from the United States.
At the moment, it is precisely under pressure from the United States that the process of actual modernization of the military-industrial complex of European NATO countries is being initiated. And accordingly, processes related to the re-equipment of European partners with newer strike systems and consequently enhanced active defense are underway.
Ukrainians can boast about the modernization of their weaponry. Our country is developing weapons against Russian glide bombs and can already report on their use in the field. There has been successful deployment and elimination of the first 100 enemy aerial bombs of the enemy.
The widespread and extensive mass use of powerful glide bombs has allowed the Russian Federation to achieve significant tactical success along the entire extended line of contact. Specifically, in certain sectors of the front, the aviation of the occupying country, the Russian aerospace forces, strikes the positions of Ukraine's defense forces, using up to 300 glide bombs per day. Based on these challenges, the Ukrainian side has developed a system to counter glide bombs. This refers to a joint development with NATO countries, which will include several components: ground-based, aerial, and accordingly electronic warfare systems.
The development of new defense systems is vital for Ukrainians under constant Russian shelling. At this moment, every resident of Ukraine is a target, even the weapons developers themselves. During the strike on Vyshhorod in the Kyiv region, an employee of the defense company Firepoint, which develops the Flamingo missiles, was killed in his own home. With an Iskander-M ballistic missile strike, Russia took the lives and health of peaceful residents of Dnipro who will no longer go to work, return home, or visit friends, because the Kremlin has taken that possibility away from them.
A grand fiasco for yet another of Putin's so-called wonder weapons. Russian propaganda has collectively lost its tongue. The launch of the Sarmat missile turned into a mega failure for Moscow. The projectile didn't even have time to gain altitude before it broke apart over Russia. The dictator is in shock. Russians are paralyzed with fear, and Kremlin media are now frantically scrubbing any mentions because the catastrophe has become too obvious. So what is really behind this superweapon, and has it turned out to be nothing more than an extraordinary soap bubble? We'll find out in just a moment.
A unique missile system with no analogs in the world is already practically in service with the Russian army. Back in June 2023, Putin was making such statements.
Very soon, the first operational launches of the powerful Sarmat complex, equipped with the new advanced intercontinental ballistic missile system, will be deployed and ready. Heavy missile.
It's already December 2025 outside. Another weapon. No analogs and still not on combat duty.
There's nothing like Sarmat in the world. And yet, it's still not on duty with us either. It will be on duty soon.
From the latest failed test at the Yasny Cosmodrome in the Orenburg region to putting the Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile on combat duty, it's still a long way off.
Hold me, I'm filming.
This is already the second unsuccessful attempt to test the Sarmat missile. The first one took place in 2024. The missile exploded in the silo during a failed launch at the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in the Arkhangelsk region. This time, the failed launch, which happened on the last weekend of November, was recorded on video by locals. After the explosion, a huge cloud of toxic orange-purple color rose into the air. The Russian authorities did not provide an official comment, while local media wrote that there would be no evacuation from Yasny, claiming that the smoke cloud poses no threat to people and that everything is fine overall. The color of the cloud after the explosion is characteristic of something highly poisonous.
Such a color is typical only for rockets that use rather toxic fuel, namely a pair of nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine, which is better known as amyl or heptyl. It is precisely amyl and heptyl that are used as fuel in a whole range of Soviet and now Russian
rockets. A cosmodrome, clearly. First and foremost, it is a rocket launch base. One of 11 sites in Russia from which rockets with nuclear warheads can be launched. And with high probability, these were yet another unsuccessful test of the Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile.
The missile seems to be in serial production, supposedly already adopted by the military, all since 2022. But with so many launch failures, it's very hard to talk about its actual presence in the military or its real combat readiness, at least by even the most basic high standards. Both the shape of the missile and, more importantly, the main location from where this happened point to the Sarmat. That location is the very one where the Sarmats are based in silos.
If the information about the launch is confirmed 100%, then this was the third or fourth launch. Of the Sarmat, only one of which was successful, and even that only partially. Most likely the launches were carried out at the end of the year so that Putin could threaten with another wonder weapon during his annual address to the Federal Assembly. But as we can see, things did not go according to plan.
It was just another childish morning performance like in kindergarten. Everything was scripted, who says what. But there was no reason for it because the missile exploded. Andriy Ryzhenko, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ukrainian Navy from 2004 to 2020.
80% of the tests, actually only the very first ones were successful, and then not anymore. No one can seriously consider this missile a finished product. However, there is no doubt that work is being done on it, with
the failure of the Sarmat nuclear missile launch, another extraordinary incident occurred at the Baikonur Cosmodrome over the weekend during the launch of Soyuz MS-28. As a result,
After the post-flight inspection, it was determined that the rocket engine's exhaust jet tore out part of Launch Complex number 6 of the Space Rocket Complex number 31 in the first stage. The cosmonauts were not injured, however, the launch complex requires repairs. After the transfer of Gagarin's launch pad number 1 to the Kazakhstan Museum of Cosmonautics, pad number 31 remains the only one from which manned launches can be carried out. There are no replacement or backup pads for manned Soyuz flights anymore, only cargo ones remain.
now the only Roscosmos launch pad from which launches could be carried out for manned missions has been left without a functioning service cabin for maintenance. Russia is failing its rocket and space programs one after another, both military and research. And such failures cast serious doubt on Russia's status as both a nuclear and space power.
Urgently NATO-level weapons for Ukraine, Norway has taken a step forward, the launch of drone production that will break all the molds. Kyiv is leading the drone. Topos is already shifting to a military footing right in the UK. This is a true technological breakthrough. Robotic strongpoints on the front line, occupiers get ready. What other mega weapon could burst onto the Ukrainian front any day now and break the enemy into pieces? Don't miss what's coming up next.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
A new level and scale, Ukraine and Norway have reached an agreement on collaboration in the field of unmanned aerial vehicle production. The corresponding agreement was signed by the Ukrainian side, with the Norwegian Minister of Defense Dennis Shmyhal emphasized that this cooperation will be an important step in expanding Ukraine's production capabilities and strengthening the country's defense capacity. The top priority is the rapid deployment of an experimental production line as early as 2026.
We are gaining access not only to the production base, but also to the technologies of NATO countries. This is an opportunity for cooperation in the production of Ukrainian drones and accordingly for the exchange of experience, both in terms of the practical use of Ukrainian interceptor and strike drones and accordingly their scaling up.
A similar model of cooperation is being implemented with the United Kingdom. A few days ago, Kyiv signed a licensing agreement for the large-scale production of Octopus interceptor drones at British facilities.
This is an exclusively Ukrainian development, and it is already being used in real combat conditions. This drone can operate at night and is capable of countering electronic warfare systems in real time. Moreover, it is noted that this drone can operate at low altitudes.
The manufactured interceptor drones will be delivered to Ukraine to strengthen its defense against Russian UAVs. The Octopus project is being implemented as a joint defense industrial initiative. The United Kingdom has obtained a license for mass production of the Ukrainian interceptor, and Ukraine will receive them to enhance its own interception capabilities.
The signed agreement provides for the production of several thousand interceptor drones for defense needs, specifically for the defense needs of Ukraine. And this production will take place at enterprises in the United Kingdom. This essentially eliminates the possibility for the Russian side to destroy the defense enterprises manufacturing this equipment.
3 manufacturers have already received the necessary approvals to produce the drones, Octopus Technologies. Another 11 companies are preparing production lines for them. After the start of Russia's full-scale aggression in 2022, the United Kingdom became one of Ukraine's main partners. London is providing substantial military assistance. In addition, the United Kingdom is actively promoting sanctions pressure on Russia and providing financial support to Ukraine.
The United Kingdom is a pioneer when it comes to the practical implementation of so-called coalitions. The Drone Coalition, the Navy Coalition, the Armed Forces Coalition, and accordingly the United Kingdom was the first to provide Ukraine with heavy military equipment. Specifically, we're talking about Challenger 2 tanks. It was only after these actions by the United Kingdom that the United States supplied Ukraine with their Abrams tanks.
It is also planned to create robotic strongpoints in Ukraine, which will be equipped with combat modules to counter Russian occupiers. In
the first place, this concerns the logistics component, that is, ground robots. They will take on the main part of the logistics. This will reduce losses among personnel and, accordingly, equipment of the defense forces of Ukraine. We're talking about delivering ammunition and accordingly evacuating the wounded. Plus, of course, there is the engineering function. This includes mining and demining the area.
Earlier, Ukraine, together with the United States, began producing interceptor drones capable of countering Russian strike UAVs. Additionally, the Dutch government will provide 250 million euros for the purchase of American weapons for Ukraine under the Pural program. In the United States, in particular, anti-aircraft missiles for F-16s and ammunition will be purchased. F-16s and ammunition, which Kyiv needs most of all.
Putin is urgently losing his air force. Now, even civilian aircraft have become a huge burden for the dictator. Foreign aircraft are out of the question for Russia. The software hasn't been updated for 4 years. There are big problems with domestically produced planes. Rosaviatia is stubbornly trying to cover up the failures. It seems that soon, they won't even be able to get Putin's plane in the air. All about this in detail. Don't miss what's next.
Russian planes keep breaking down more and more often. Malfunctions usually occur while still in the air, which can lead to a huge tragedy. This concerns both the stolen foreign aircraft, which the Russians can't repair because of sanctions, and their domestic pride.
An Aeroflot plane operating the Irkutsk-Moscow flight was forced to make an emergency landing at the Perm Airport Bolshoye Savino, the airline's press service reported. We're talking about flight Su-1563, which had 158 passengers on board. As the carrier clarified, the captain made the decision for an unscheduled landing due to an indication of increased fuel consumption, which could have indicated a possible leak.
And now, another blow. Airbus has urgently recalled 6,000 A320 aircraft. And all this is to roll back a failed software update. There are also stolen planes of this model in Russia, so no one is calling them in for repairs. But Rosaviatia boasted that they don't need it anyway because they already have old software. It hasn't been updated since 2022.
So, roughly speaking, we have Windows 7 while the problems happen to users of Windows 10.
There's really not much to brag about, to be honest. If a company can fix a software glitch in a couple of hours, nothing can help the Russian stolen aircraft anymore. Unless the sanctions are lifted, why would that happen?
The number of operational aircraft keeps dropping. The operation of aircraft is constantly decreasing. This year alone, I don't remember exactly, but about 30 Airbuses were taken out of service. But there, 2 regions are a different story. There they are being operated quite intensively. And there are issues with resources, for example, cycle limits and cabin pressurization. If those cycles are exceeded, that's it. The plane is either written off or sent to Airbus in Toulouse or somewhere else. And there, it all comes down to the final cost. These are major undertakings and no one wants to deal with them. That's why gradually, just like the entire Russian economy, the visa fleet is slowly withering away.
It's hard to say exactly how much time the Russian civil fleet has left, but we're definitely not talking about decades.
I cannot say precisely how much exact time. Well, realistically speaking, within the next 5 years. I strongly believe that in 7 years, they'll be in a very extremely challenging, precarious situation. They won't have time to make their own planes. This current year, they confidently promised a remarkable 1,000 aircraft by the year 2030. I genuinely think that in a mere 5 to 7 years, they will inevitably collapse if absolutely nothing fundamentally changes.
The Russians insist that by then, their import substitution will be fully operational, and foreign aircraft will simply no longer be needed. To be fair, Russia does actually have domestic airplanes. The Sukhoi Superjet, which constantly breaks down and falls apart, almost entirely made from foreign components, and then there's also the MC-21. The latter is considered the key project of Russian civil aviation. And just a few days ago, they even boasted that the MC-21 had begun flight certification tests. But the start of serial production of the MC-21 was originally scheduled for 2017. Then the dates kept getting pushed back, and still there is no serial production. Rostec boasts about the tests. And just like in 2010, they went to Dubai to show off a mock-up of the plane.
They're making 2, 3, maybe 5 MC-21 units. All of these will undergo testing. There are many stages involved before the plane can be put into operation. Right now, they're practically at the very beginning.
It's hard to say how long the testing will take. Meanwhile, Russia's civil aviation is fading before our eyes.
Here it's been completely uprooted. Entirely. This is the external part. The same thing is happening now.
That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hatsakalo. Even more hellish news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit like. See you.